More really disturbing information on British spy and dossier author, fake news dossier author, Christopher Steele. Not a day goes by where we don't have 3, 4, 5 news stories about this scandal of the DOJ and FBI potentially being weaponized at the hands of Hillary Clinton. I say potentially because we don't have the ironclad proof yet, but in my mind, we have it. They were weaponized on behalf of Hillary Clinton. But the most nefarious figure in all this is shaping up to be Christopher Steele, the former British spy. Now, Andrew McCabe is a pretty nefarious figure in all this, as is James Comey, as is Loretta Lynch, as is Peter Strzok, as is Lisa Page. But Steele was at the center of it all, and new information is surfacing, coming now out of Senator Chuck Grassley's committee. Now, if you remember, Senators Grassley and Graham wrote a letter to the Department of Justice not long ago, a month and a half ago, maybe 2 months ago, tops, asking DOJ to begin to look into a criminal case against Steele. Why would they do that? Well, it appears that Steele, knowingly and intentionally, Comey's favorite buzzwords, passed what Comey himself called unverified and salacious information from not only his contacts in Russia, but from Clinton associates to the DOJ and FBI. Now, why would he do that? Well, we know he was being paid by Fusion GPS, and we know how shady the payments to Fusion GPS were from the Clinton campaign. So a quick tutorial on that. In the political world, there are 2 types of money. You've heard the terms hard money and soft money. Most of you know what it is. For those who don't, I'll explain it very briefly. Hard money is the campaign. John Smith for Congress, Hillary Clinton for president, Donald J. Trump for president, Ted Cruz for Senate. That official hard money campaign. And the Federal Election Commission denotes every disbursement out of the campaign and every donation into the campaign, every loan into the campaign. You can go to fec.gov, the Federal Election Commission's website, and see every dollar that went into a campaign, from whom it came, and every dollar that went out of the campaign, who's paid. I'm on that list many times in my life. I've helped political candidates with strategic consulting, so I'm paid by them, and I've donated to many, many Republican and conservative candidates. And so my name is up there. Your name is probably up there if you've given a candidate $1. Your name is on that list. If it's a federal candidate, if it's a state race, states have their own databases. So we do that so that there's transparency in the process. We do that so that we ensure that people don't go over the maximum allowable. Right now in the U.S., for a federal race, an individual can give $2,700 in the primary, $2,700 in the general election. So we want to make sure that people aren't violating the rules. We want to make sure that candidates aren't violating the rules by paying for certain things and then saying, well, we didn't pay for that. And that's precisely what it appears Hillary Clinton did. Because by paying Fusion GPS through her law firm, Perkins Coie, her hard money campaign. Now, soft money are PACs, political action committees and organizations, super PACs, things of that nature. Their reporting standards are a little bit more relaxed, but we're focused on hard money campaigns here. It appears that Hillary Clinton violated campaign finance law because she was paying, her campaign was paying Fusion GPS for research, but doing it through the law firm. Now, that would prevent Fusion GPS from being listed on the disbursements from her campaign and on the Federal Election Commission's website. That's very problematic. That's the exact reason the transparency laws around campaign finance exist, so that you can't hide money. Now, this all lends to the theory that Hillary was up to something shady with Fusion GPS, Christopher Steele, the FBI, Peter Strzok, Andrew McCabe. By paying Fusion GPS through her law firm, Perkins Coie, when you go to fec.gov, when you look at the Hillary Clinton for President campaign, you will only see disbursements to Perkins Coie. You won't see disbursements to Fusion GPS. And if Hillary gave Perkins Coie the money with the intent of them using a portion of that money to pay Fusion GPS, if Perkins Coie acted as middleman and did it and Fusion GPS accepted it, well, then all three are in violation of campaign finance laws. And I do suspect there'll be an investigation into that, because now things are starting to pick up in terms of investigating the left. Now, I've got a story here from Fox News about the role of Christopher Steele. And what it tells us, Catherine Herridge reported and did a very, very good job, is that Steele essentially did just that. While he was working for Fusion GPS, while he was handing information to the FBI from his sources in Moscow, and I'll get into that in a moment, he was also receiving information from Clinton associates. Now, that's really, really problematic, because he was taking biased information from people who really wanted Hillary Clinton to win, not just some Russians who thought they were going to be in the good grace of the FBI if they spun some ridiculous yarns about Donald Trump. And he was passing, it appears, all that information over to the FBI and DOJ as fact. Information they then took to a FISA judge and presented as hard investigative fact. And we really need to see that FISA warrant application, because that's going to dispel many, many of the Democrats' claims. It's going to debunk a lot of their claims on this whole thing. And Trey Gowdy feels there was a problem with FISA abuses. He's one of the few who has seen that application because he sits on the appropriate committees to have viewed everything. I believe Devin Nunes hasn't seen it because the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence, which Nunes chairs, didn't have access to the FISA application, only the ensuing reports that enabled them to generate the memo. Another interesting point about transparency: the Republicans in the House, on the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence, unanimously voted to release both the Nunes memo and Adam Schiff's counter memo. Democrats voted against Nunes' memo. So who's more about transparency, Republicans or Democrats who voted against the release of both memos? They voted for their own. They didn't want Nunes' released. The Republicans voted to release Schiff's as well. They want the public to make their own decisions. They want you to see everything. And I'm really proud of the way Republicans are acting here. But back to Steele. So why would the hierarchy of the FBI use a guy? Now, the FBI is the world's premier law enforcement agency. They're called in on cases around the world, even when tensions with Russia were high years back. When Andre Chikatilo, if you don't know who he is, he was a brutal, notorious serial killer, especially of children. He was cannibalistic, one of the worst in global history. Well, the Russian cops couldn't catch him, and they finally said, enough with political tensions. We don't care. Children are being killed. We need the FBI. They're the best in the world at this. And that's the FBI's reputation. Despite Strzok and Comey and McCabe, the rank-and-file agents are still considered the world's best investigators. They do an amazing job day in and day out. The FBI is called in on terror situations around the world. When foreign governments need their investigative help, their forensic expertise, the FBI lab is second to none. Now, why would the FBI, with that kind of investigative prowess, those kinds of resources, rely on a guy, Christopher Steele, who wasn't even a spy anymore? He was in private sector as essentially a glorified private investigator. Why would the FBI rely on that and not send their own investigator to vet the things Steele had said? Well, could it be that Comey, McCabe, Strzok, Lisa Page, Bill Priestap, Jim Rybicki, Josh Campbell, who's now gone over to CNN, could it be that the little cabal at the top of the FBI didn't want people outside of their cabal, didn't want people who weren't pro-Hillary, ideologically aligned with them, to know what was going on? It sure seems that way to me, because those other people might have looked at this and said, man, this is a little odd. I got this dossier. I went over to Russia, interviewed this guy. What's written in the dossier? This guy said, well, he heard it from a friend of a friend of a friend about Donald Trump in the 80s, and he had no firsthand knowledge. But, man, the dossier sure makes it look like he told the story firsthand. And what I've got on paper is very different than what that guy told me. What that guy told me from an investigative standpoint is junk. I wouldn't have even written it in here. And then that agent, hypothetically, would have been told by McCabe, we don't care what you think, put it in the report. Well, that agent then talks to other agents, right? And they complain. Maybe one of them is a cousin who's a chief of staff, a deputy chief of staff in a Republican congressman's office. Goes and sees the cousin on the weekend. They have a couple of drinks, and he says, man, something's really bothering me. Something I saw at work's really bothering me. You might want to give your boss a heads up on this. You didn't hear it from me, but your boss might want to look into this. We've got this dossier, and I was over in Russia. I interviewed the guy, and he was completely incredible. I didn't believe a word he said. In fact, he got the story 4 times removed from 30 years ago, but in the dossier, it's presented as if he told the story clear as a bell from last week. I'm really uncomfortable with what my bosses are doing, but I'm too low on the totem pole. You tell your boss, the congressman, to take a look into this. I think there might be some there. And that's how leaks start, and that's how the little Comey cabal, the McCabe cabal, could have been undone had they let other agents outside of their little clique know what was going on. That happens every day. Now, that was a hypothetical, but that happens every day in law enforcement. And I suspect that's the reason why they used Steele, a middleman, because they knew that if they used Steele, they could sell Steele because he was a former FBI asset. They could jot it down, say they got the information from a former British spy. They didn't have to even say, we verified it. All they would have had to have said, which is what they apparently did, that's why I really want to see that FISA memo application. We've used this guy in the past. He's been credible in the past. His sources have delivered in the past. And then they all smugly nod at each other and say, well, we covered our butts. that works for us. And Loretta Lynch says that works for me. And then Rosenstein and Comey and everybody else, Dana Boente, sign the FISA warrant application based on information from an informant, from a source who has been credible in the past. Doesn't matter that now nothing he presented was verified. It was considered salacious and unverified under oath by James Comey to Congress. They bring that to a FISA judge, and an investigation jumps off, and the DOJ and FBI are weaponized against a political campaign. And it appears that Steele had very strong Never Trump leaning. Steele, the hub in the middle of all this. So let's dilute it down. Why would the FBI use a guy without verifying his claims? Well, because it appears they wanted to be able to take political opposition research, junk, have it filtered through a former source who was valid, so that they could then use it on behalf of Hillary Clinton and give themselves cover by saying this source right here in the middle has always been good to us. We have no reason to disbelieve him now. We don't even need to deploy resources. And that's exactly what they should have done when weaponizing the FBI and DOJ against the Trump campaign. But they didn't want to use those resources to verify the dossier because they needed this information to be as damaging, as harmful as possible to Donald Trump. And so when Senators Grassley and Graham wrote a letter to the Department of Justice asking for a criminal investigation into Steele, they were spot on. And I'll say this to Christopher Steele. He would be wise to read the history of Major John Andre, the British spy who conspired with Benedict Arnold against our government. Andre wound up at the end of a rope swinging from a tree at the direction of General George Washington. I think Christopher Steele should sit in a jail cell in a supermax prison in the United States for a very, very long time. This is really important content, and I want to bring it to you every day. So please subscribe to our premium service at www.therebel.media/shows. If you're already a subscriber, thank you very, very much. And don't forget to catch my new show, Off the Cuff, Declassified, a full hour of this content. We go deeper. We have great guests. You're going to love it every day right here on The Rebel. Thanks so much for watching. I'll be back with you tomorrow.